The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz along with Dan Rylance, and we're going to be continuing our interviews tonight with candidates running for office in the spring election. First thing I want to say though is we are very honored to have received notification today that the show that we did last year on closing corporate tax loopholes, we were notified today, has won an award in the state cable competition awards. So we're very honored by that, and we'll be getting that sometime, I guess the 1st of May or something like that.
Do we get a check with it?
No check with it, but the award is pretty. So
Good.
Anyway, it's kind of a double nice surprise because in Governor Doyle's budget, he had proposed closing those tax loopholes as well. So.
And that was our program.
Yes, that was the program. So, all right, very good. So that being said, we're very pleased to welcome two candidates running for the Oshkosh Area School District's Board of Education. I'm sure that most viewers know both of them. Wayne Traska is seated to my left. Wayne is currently seeking his second term. He's already served 3 years, and he's going back for a second term. And next to him is Ben Schneider II. Ben served from 2002 to 2008. He served 2 terms. Having lost last year, and he's a glutton for punishment. He's coming back for more. So welcome to both of you. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
We're going to be sharing the full hour with Ben and Wayne and talking about some referendum issues and other things going on in the district. So again, welcome. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Yeah,
and why don't we start, as we do with all political candidates, you guys telling us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for office. Wayne, we'll start with you.
Well, my name is Wayne Traska. I've lived in the Oshkosh area about 10 years. As you've said, I've been on the school board for 3. I have 3 children in the district. They're ages 9, 9, and 11. So I have a vested interest personally, and through their eyes I've been able to see how the district's operated. They're now in 3rd and 5th grades. And I think that having children in district gives me a position and a perspective that not everybody in this district has. Now, I know there are a lot of people with children, a lot of people have had children, but what's happening in the district today, I think, is relevant. A lot of things are based on the past. We need to look at what's happening today and in the future. I think I've done a good job representing the district as well as looking at what's going on today.
Where do your children go to school?
My children currently are attending the Alps Charter School. This is their first year in attendance there. They had previously attended Oakwood.
Okay, very good.
Ben, go ahead.
Thank you. And congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
I wonder if you have to pay taxes on that monetary award that you received.
Well, it's not a monetary award, so no.
Oh,
There's no monetary award.
Okay.
Get that off the table.
See, you put it there.
Yeah, well, he's on money right away.
well, I too have children in the system. I am a lifelong resident of this community. As you mentioned, I served on the school board from 2002 to 2008. I nearly lost the election last year, and I'm running because I want to be part of the solution. I see a lot of issues before the school board. I feel I can lend a helping hand. I am a self-employed financial advisor. I own my own business, and I have a unique skill set that I could bring to the board, which is in the area of finance. I'm also married to a school teacher, and she's she's a teacher in another school district. So I feel like I have a unique perspective. I feel like bring balance. I feel the school board needs more balance, and there's a lot of problems that the school board is facing, and I'm not really pleased with the direction of the board, and I want to be part of the solution. So I'm willing to put forth the effort for the next 3 years and add value and hopefully help the board moderate and come to more reasonable decisions.
Okay. As we go through the next hour, feel free to spar with each other if you want.
Yeah.
Just no physical altercations, if you will, please. So, Ben, you talked about making contributions and that kind of thing to the board and to the district. In your 6 years on the board, what do you feel you contributed?
Well, I think the biggest thing, well, not the biggest, but I certainly contributed perspective. I feel you look right now, the board, for example, I believe it was a 6-1 vote to pass the school calendar. And I feel the school calendar is certainly not supported by the community. It's been very contentious with the board dealing with the 4 snow days. So I think any perspective of listening to constituents and providing, I guess, a counterpoint, because sometimes you feel that the school board is not on the right track, and I'd like to like to think I've interjected many times a more moderate, responsible position. And not to say I was successful, but I certainly tried. And I remember back in 2005 I offered an alternative school calendar that would have reduced, actually eliminated the early release days, and I encouraged the board to build in a snow day, and that didn't go very far. But during that time, I was chairman of Facilities and Finance. In 2005, I actually helped start the long-range plan because we were not looking at updating our own projections. We did not really have a good maintenance plan. We all know that we're getting farther and farther behind on maintenance. I served on a variety of committees, negotiating committees, and I felt I provided a good long-term perspective. And unfortunately, that perspective didn't prevail. And I think in part because it didn't prevail, we are dealing with a lot of the issues that we're dealing with. And the board in the past has continued to defer maintenance to fund current decisions, and I think that's going back to haunt us. And I wish I was successful in getting the board during my 6 years to see that perspective about, if we keep doing the business this way, we're going to be in trouble. In fact, I remember one labor contract I didn't support. I said, if you guys support this, which I didn't, it was a 4.7% package increase. I said, in a few years, you're going to be looking at closing a lot of schools to pay for it, and I just don't think it's in the best long-term interest. So, I'd like to think I added value in many respects. I just wish my perspective would have prevailed certainly more often.
Want to respond to that at all?
Well, I too have served on the Facilities and Finance Committee, and I think that's one area that there's been a lot of focus, and there'll continue to be a lot of focus as far as finances goes. We took some large steps a couple years ago to catch up on some of our roof repairs. We spent more than $3 million in facilities improvements over that time frame. Unfortunately, we had to take some of that money out of fund balance to pay for it, to catch up. Facilities needs obviously are the reason why we're at referendum coming April 7th. I've also served on a negotiating team as well as on the Administrator Compensation Committee. Again, I think I bring a perspective from my business background as well as a parent, looking at things from the perspective of how it affect not only parents, students, but also our community as a whole. Again, I work in this community. I think it's very important for good schools to be the basis of this community. Without good, strong education, we aren't going to have good employees to hire in the future. I think that my perspective on the board, while has not always been the one that's been the loudest, always been the most vocal, I think I bring a calming, sensible perspective to a lot of issues that we discuss and contemplate.
I was going back through some old clippings from the Northwestern just to kind of refresh. And, Rickman kept calling, I think the board that both of you were people are on, the dysfunctional board, calling for your resignations. Remember, and it seems to me that his issues were that you guys never did come to a decision on boundaries. Did you? You never really came to a decision on major facility improvements. And in a sense, this referendum on the 7th is sort of comes too late for a lot of people. And a lot of voters are blaming the board, they're voting against these referendums because you guys never did anything in that earlier period. Now, is that a fair characterization? How would you respond to that?
Well, I have to say, we had a lot of information to go through, and there's a lot of history, and we're not trying to make up for a lot of history here. Not just what happened in the last year or two, or 3 or 4. We're going back several years. I have been frustrated at times that as a board we have not been able to come together more as a whole. A lot of 4-3 votes, and it's caused some problems. Now, I think we have to also look at the leadership as a whole in the district. It's not just the board, but it's also, we work hand in hand with administration. I'm very optimistic with some of the changes we've had at administration that with the board, with the administration, we can move forward on some things. Are a lot of these things past due? Absolutely. But I think it would be shortchanging this community if somebody, in spite of that, decides not to support something that needs to happen now.
Do you have any response?
Yeah, I think part of the dysfunctionality, if that's a word.
Yeah, that's one he used.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't a word, I'd like to coin it here.
You can use it another word if you want.
But I think it's because I don't think there's a lot of tolerance on the board. When I was on the board, you almost were ridiculed if you didn't agree with 5 or 6 board members. In fact, I remember in 2005 when I brought forth an alternative calendar. Excuse me. I remember one board member, and I did it in a calm manner, and I remember one board member said he was offended that I brought back a school calendar. And I know, Mr. Traska supported the calendar, and the decision not to build in snow days is certainly one I think that has really angered a lot of parents.
There was a 2-day snow day built into this contract.
No, there has not been a snow day. That we've had, in 4 years, we've had 7 snow days, and in 4 years there has not been a single snow day built in.
Well, if I may,
Yeah, please.
there are not snow days built within the calendar as it stands, but there are snow days designated to expand the calendar beyond the end.
Right.
So there are provisions for snow days. They're just have not been built within the boundaries.
And
of
you
the-
voted against the 16 minutes from now until the end of the year.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and that was on a 4-3 vote, I think.
But there are no snow days built
Okay.
in. So
I thought
actually,
your
to be clear, there are no snow days
Okay.
built in.
Okay.
The current calendar, well, prior to the 16 minutes added on, and I know Mr. Traska supported this, the snow days were going to be made up after graduation. So basically the kids graduate, and after graduation they're expected to come back to school and make up that time. But back to the question regarding the dysfunctional school board, I just don't think there's a lot of tolerance for opposing views, more moderate views.
I find that adjective just blows me away, that you're a moderate. I mean, it's just, I was almost going to underline it 3 times.
What do you mean by that?
That you're strident, you're outspoken. You're not a moderate voice on that board for the 6 years that you were on there. You were augmentative. I think the board is much more peaceful since you've left. So for you to say you're a moderate, I just thinking, God, that's a word that,
Well, give me an example.
long speeches, being negative, challenging things all the time, and you never got any votes usually for your positions.
Well,
So
what's wrong with, long speeches? I don't know if you've paid attention, but the school board still has meetings that last very long.
Okay.
And I guess I disagree with you. And I know
Well,
you're
that's
kind
fine,
of,
yeah.
right now you're kind of editorializing, which is, you
Right.
can do.
Right.
But I disagree with you. And I look at the school board in terms of the past year since I've been off.
Right.
They hired a national search firm that led to a temporary superintendent.
Right.
So I look at the leadership, and I know Mr. Trask is the vice president. The last year, we have a recommendation to build a RIF road school without any long-term enrollment projections, and we are an enrollment declining district. In fact, next year is projected our enrollment will decline by over 156 students. So if I'm talking too long for you right now, it's because I'm trying to explain my position, and I'm passionate about it. I want the best education possible for our kids. I want my kids to be prepared for 21st century learning, and I see that we're not really being as innovative as we need to be to compete in a global marketplace. And right now, we have this mega referendum that basically, this board has deferred maintenance to kind of get by each and every year. And we have, I believe, up to a $4 million deficit next year.
Didn't you defer payments on maintenance for the 6 years you were on the board?
I never, when I was in the school board, I never voted to defer maintenance. I never said, when a resolution came to me, to say I'm not going to support this because I want to defer maintenance. I certainly did not support the roof repairs because it rated the fund balance, and which dangerously puts us low, and it puts us at risk of a Moody's downgrade on our bond. But I mean, our fund balance is at the lowest level. Well, it's extremely low. But you know, I didn't defer maintenance. In fact, I helped start the long-range plan because I was concerned about the lack of the maintenance plan, and you know, and I like to take credit for that because I'm proud of that.
I don't want to overdo this. The Northwestern asked you about your priorities if you would be elected to this board next time. Wayne, you said that your two top priorities were capital improvements and maintenance. Your last priorities were capital improvements and maintenance.
That's not true. Actually, well, they reported it wrong because my top. No, I think you're reading that wrong. It actually, what would you cut least? And I said, special education. My top priorities are special education, capital improvements, and maintenance, and I believe in that order. So
Okay.
I actually would challenge her.
And sports and extracurricular were much higher than his.
Sports and extracurricular would be, I think site budgets, sports, and extracurricular would be what I would look at first.
Okay.
So actually, I would say we're in agreement, but where the disagreement is, I mean, I wasn't on the board, but I know the board, and I believe Mr. Traska supported this, they voted to cut $300,000 from the maintenance program just back a few months ago to help balance the budget. And see, that's the problem. It's kind of like the low-hanging fruit, and that really puts, I think, our students at risk because we, you know, I'm blessed with my children going to Traeger, and it's a school that's the second newest school, so I don't have to deal with the chronic maintenance concerns of other parents, and I wish other parents didn't have to deal with that. But I do think that, and that's in part why I didn't support a lot of budgets, because I just felt like the board majority didn't adequately prioritize, and you know, and I know that that's by some people means you're dysfunctional or you're divisive, but you know, I'm passionate about that because I knew that we'd be in the point that we're in today, and you know, and I'm sorry that you have that opinion because that wasn't my intent, but you know, I'm passionate about, you know, being a long-term problem solver and being a part of the solution. And I saw these problems, and it's hard for me to sit by and watch. Unfortunately, people just create these problems and not be part of the solution because you're out on you don't have the votes.
I
Go ahead.
see where you probably saw this from, Dan, because I printed off the the questions that the Northwestern asked and the responses. And Ben, it does have site budgets first, administration second, extracurriculars third, sports fourth, technology 5, transportation 6, professional development for staff 7, teachers 8, and maintenance 9, capital projects 10. So is that not the order then that you intended to have them?
That's the order in which I would apply cuts.
Right.
Okay.
The question wasn't how do you prioritize.
Okay.
It's where would you prioritize cuts. And the question, in
Was
my
it-
opinion,
was it
I don't know if
double
you-
negatives?
It was sort of a oddly
Okay.
posed question, I believe.
Okay.
Okay.
I apologize that.
Well,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
won't happen again, man.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
If I could, I'd just
Yeah.
like to address a couple things that
Yeah,
Mr. Schneider
please.
commented on. First of all, as far as the declining enrollment district, that's absolutely true, but there needs to be an asterisk next to that. We are a declining enrollment district. However, the decline, depending on how you look at it, occurred several years ago for the most part. On average, we have roughly 700 students per grade in the elementary levels. It's about 750 or so when you get to the middle school, and we're at 850 high school. So as those students age out through the high school levels, yes, enrollments are declining. But while it looks like a sharp drop is coming, it's not at the front end. It's not at the elementary level. It's on the back end. So we've had this decline sort of chew through the system. I also wanted to talk about the roofs too a little bit. I was not happy that fund balance was the answer to fix the roofs, but the roofs had to be fixed. The alternative would have been a little more patch here, a little more patch there. Ultimately, I'm afraid possibly costing us more money down the road. As far as our fund balance, it's not where I'd like it to be, and as we go through the next budget cycle, I want to see how we can put things in position to be able to maybe have money go back into that fund balance to boost it up. I proposed at a recent workshop that we take a look at our enrollments when we do our budgeting and not be too optimistic on the numbers in totality as it pertains to getting funding from the state. If we're a little more conservative there, I think we'd all be a lot better off if we're pleasantly surprised with a few more students on day one than fewer. I also would like to say, when it comes to the capital improvements, that the cuts, it's out there that we cut $300,000. I guess I'd like to also point out that while we had to do some reprioritization because of some projected budget shortfalls, we've already spent more money this year than we did in last year, and we're still not done. As we look through the budget and how we've progressed so far this year, we're going to be looking, I believe at our next facilities and finance meeting, at variances to our budget year to date. If we have some opportunities, if there's some places where possibly we've had expenses come in lower than expected, I want to try and redirect some of those funds yet this year into more of the facilities projects that we had to defer. And that was part of the intent at that time.
Well, going back to the...
Can I just?
Sure, go
Thank
ahead.
you. I wanted to clarify, actually, I feel it's not accurate to say we're not in decline enrollment. In fact, see, I brought information because I like to reference district information. I don't like to just make statements without the documentation. So if you ask me something and I say I don't know, it's probably because I'm not going to speculate. But in terms of our enrollment decline, we have 16 elementary schools, and the incoming kindergarten class is smaller than the outgoing 5th grade class at Traeger, E. Cook, Franklin, Merrill, Oakwood, Shapiro, Smith, and Washington. So over half of our schools are enrollment decline based on the, obviously the graduating students and the incoming students. So it's not accurate to say it's leveled off. And the other schools, we kind of have, more of a leveling impact. So when I look at the graduating class, when the incoming kindergartners are smaller than the outgoing 5th graders, that means that we have, a smaller amount of students entering, and eventually we're going to have difficulty keeping these schools filled. In fact, in 2000, the community approved, in 2000, Jefferson Elementary School opened with about 250 students. Today, their enrollment is 176. The enrollment at the newest school has gone down almost 30%, which is why I'm concerned about the board majority trying to build a new school that would be larger than Carl Traeger in terms of capacity on Riff Road. In terms of capital improvements, the board has actually has been cutting that for the last few years. The amount approved by resolution in 2007 was $827,000. They spent $559,000. In the previous years, they actually spent more because they depleted the fund balance, and I agree with roofs. Roofs are in tough shape, but I want to point out the board, I believe, spent no money on roofs last year. In fact, they spent more money on fencing for tennis courts than they did for roofs. So if roofs are so concerning, you'd think that each and every year there'd be an ongoing commitment to do that. So I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's all right.
Well,
Go
he's
ahead,
talking,
Wayne.
you want to get back on the enrollment thing for a minute? Because I don't think that's what you said exactly, was it?
No, I wasn't speaking about any specific school. While what he's saying is factual, again, if you look at the numbers in totality, as far as total number of elementary students that we have, the number might be slightly smaller kindergarten last year than 5th grade going out. I guess we could debate and argue for quite some time what's a significant difference. I don't see that it's a significant difference. In fact, this year's 1st grade class probably is about the same, if not maybe slightly bigger than the 5th grade class. I mean, you can bounce around and take the numbers however you want to look at them, but in totality, It is not a declining group.
Okay. Going back to the fund balance and the roofs, Ben, I appreciate what you're saying about not rating a fund balance. I don't think that, I mean, that should be there, I think, for emergency type situations and what have you. But if that had not been done, where would you have then cut in order to make sure that the roofs were taken care of as they needed to be?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. One area that 4 years ago I supported was because I thought it was supposed to be a 3-year program, which is curriculum support specialist. I was told at the time by our superintendent that this should be a 3-year program, and now we're on year 4. And that program is about $1 million annual program, and I would phase that out. I also would look at making two staffing adjustments. I would eliminate 2 positions central office. I think everybody's asked to be more lean and mean, and more lean, and I think we have to make tough choices, and I'm willing to make those tough choices. I think we could make one site-based change. I think we could save money on our attorney fees. We spend way more money than comparable districts for legal fees. And I think we have, many other areas, the way we bid our projects. In the past we've used Tremco for roofing, which is, based on my analysis, is in other industry professionals, is very expensive. So I just outlined over $1.5 million of cuts, which negates the need, in my opinion, to have question number 2, because I think we're going to need to make some tough choices, and I'm willing to do that. But unfortunately, the board just seems to, want to pass registration fees. The board kind of just, passes, guaranteed pay raises for non-representative staff.
He doesn't like the board, does he?
Well, I'm actually. Well, yeah, like I said, I'm trying to be part of the. I'm telling you what the problem is.
Yeah,
I'm trying to tell you
yeah,
what the solution.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
But
But you clearly are disagreeing with a lot of things that Mr. Traska has supported.
Right. I don't agree with him, but I think Mr. Trask is a nice guy, but I don't agree with it, and I'm passionate because, now our community's put in a situation where we have to spend $24 million for part 1 of a part 3 phase 1 of a 3-part referendum, and I don't see it passing.
Yeah, we're going to get to the referendum here in a minute.
So I disagree, and I'm trying to be respectful, but I'm passionate about it because I want our schools to be the best schools in the state.
Well, I guess I'm going to just sort of feed off of your question.
Yeah.
Ben, you said that there's some personalities on the board that don't like, they're the majority, they don't like a minority opinion. Those weren't your exact words, but that was the gist of it. So, you obviously have been one of the lone voices. If you're elected, you will be, again, probably one of the lone voices. So if you're trying to bring some cohesion and working together with the board, how will you go about doing that, knowing that this is the situation that you feel you're up against? How will you bring cohesiveness?
Well, I think the board is starting to see the writing on the wall in terms of, I think people are getting very impatient with where we've been led, and I think I see some change in some board members for the better. In fact, recently the board approved increasing the core graduation requirements by 0.5 by adding a financial literacy component. I think it was a great decision, and I know a few years ago when I talked about that, with some staff, I don't believe so much at the board level, and some board members, I didn't see a lot of support. So I see some change as a result of, in a sense, the board's backs to the wall in a lot of these. So certainly, when I first got on the board, I feel that I could have done things better, and I agree with some of, I think as I get a little more gray hair, I kind of mellow a little
bit, yeah.
And children will do that to you, and I regret
Defeats
that.
might do it to you too.
Pardon me?
Defeats might do it to you as well.
Yeah, and this big knot in my forehead.
I don't see it, no.
So-
But I mean seriously.
But
man,
and so I have to recommit myself to. I'm certainly not going to apologize for disagreeing, but I think I need to recommit myself to try to reach board members. I have a unique skill set, and for a living, I advise people on how to to be prepared for retirement. If I don't see someone adequately planning, I try to reach that person. If I can't convince them, but some people can't be convinced, and I guess that's what elections are for. But I think that we're going to see some change in this board. We'll have certainly one new board member, and I speculate that there'll be a high voter turnout, and a lot of people won't, probably want to have board to really look at the existing budget before you just ask for more. So, again, I'm hoping to be part of the solution. I see a lot of, I think all the board members are good people, but
I don't want to pick on you, but there's
But you are.
so you say
That's
that
okay.
sort of a new bend, but it really blew me away. You appeared at the last two board meetings. Sort of reminded me of Kokovich because you came asking a lot of questions. You wanted enrollment figures for the next 10 years. As a former school board member, why didn't you just call the office and go over and ask to pick up a copy? Instead, you went after them. And at one point you said, I should remind the board. And I want the board to answer this and that. To me, that was very abrasive. What did you think of his appearances, demanding answers to questions, which normally isn't part of a question or of a comment when people come on agenda items, is it?
No, and that's that's not the forum that we have for.
Right.
It's for public input, for people to come and make statements and share their thoughts with the board, not challenge us with direct questions,
Right.
expecting answers from the table. Certainly, people ask questions. We'll work at getting
Right.
them answers.
Yeah. So you felt he was sort of out of order the way he made those two appearances.
Well, it's public. It's a public forum. You can bring to the table whatever you want to bring to the table.
Right.
I don't think that we should be expected to give answers on spot of any specificity, though. That's not what that forum is for.
Okay. Any response?
well, I'm disappointed that you find that it's unreasonable to ask questions and seek answers. And
You were demanding answers.
what? Well, I'm asking for answers, and I don't think that's unreasonable when we're asked to support a $15 million referendum when it's in an area that no one can walk to. And I think that maybe we have a difference in opinion in terms of I have a high standard for for other people's money. I do this for a living. I want to make sure that our dollars are invested wisely, so we're not in this situation. Because I can tell you, I just I saw where we were headed years ago, and I try to warn the board. And I know you say it was too strong, but I wish we weren't in the situation we're in, because I don't see these referendum questions passing, and I don't see a plan B. I don't apologize for
I understand.
wanting to get information. And I asked Mr. Traska today, what are the long-term enrollment projections? In 2005, I helped start the long-range plan, in part because I wanted long-term enrollment projections. And our enrollment projections are over 2 years old, and it has nothing's projected out for this Riff Road school, and that's concerning. That should be concerning for anybody that is going to watch this program or that's thinking about, should I give the district $15 million for a new Northside school? Because based on my analysis and the district's own analysis, we probably won't even have the numbers to keep the school open in 5 or 10 years. And that's why I'm asking. And if you say it demanding, I wasn't pounding my fist on the table, but I guess I'm frustrated.
Yeah,
And
I understand.
I just want to get information, and I want to make sure that we make good decisions, and we put our constituents' hard-earned tax dollars to work and invest it wisely.
Okay.
What is your plan B, both of you, if, for Oaklawn, if this referendum, the first question for the new school fails? Where do we go from here?
Plan B is we need to regroup and retool. You put together a plan and you want to go forward with it. One step of our plan, as the state of Wisconsin dictates, is go to the community and ask them for permission to be able to spend that money. If the community says no, well, Plan B is we still need to educate children, we still need to operate facilities, and we need to find a way to make that happen. Putting a lot of effort and energy into a Plan B that you may never execute probably is resources not wisely spent. That doesn't mean we don't have any idea what we'll possibly do. But I think we need to get some feedback as we go through the referendum process. It's a process. It's not just one day on a calendar that people make a decision. It's a process that we go through, getting feedback from the community. That's going to help draw the next plan if the referendum were not to pass. You know, what is the community going to support? What is the feeling right now of do we look at a different configuration of a new school? You know, there are other options that could be explored. I can't say that they're going to be better options than what we have on the table today, but any option that the community supports is better than one that they don't, because without their support, we can't do it.
Ben?
Well, I'm just trying to think, what is the plan B then? I mean, I was trying
No,
to...
she's asking what your plan
No,
B is.
I understand, but
Yeah.
I'm still trying to, because that was one of the questions I had, so I'm trying to listen to what Mr. Traska just said. So what is the plan B?
Well, if what you're asking for, Mr. Schneider, is an outline and a booklet that spells out every detail on this is what we're going to do with a failed referendum on April 8th, that doesn't exist. So you don't need to come to our next board meeting and ask for that.
Okay. Well, I don't plan on coming to ask for something I know that doesn't exist, but it's disappointing to me that the board has chosen to go to referendum, and I think this shows kind of the, I would say the low, not a very high standard for actually voting yes. And in terms of what the plan B is, there is none.
What's
But
your plan B?
My plan B is to get enrollment data to find out what schools have the enrollment projections to justify keeping those schools open. I am committed if you know, if we need to make some enrollment decision closures, I would certainly do that if we have the data to justify that. And that's why it's so important to have this data, so we can, you know, put it on the table and say, you know, is this sufficient to keep the school open? And
Do you know what the Dow Jones average will be next year?
No.
That's-
But why did you ask that question?
Well, because you've been asking for projections out to 210. Go ahead.
I'm glad you asked that
Well,
question because
2010's next year.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked that
So-
question because, yes, we should look at data. We should make decisions based on data. However, we have to also understand the validity and how much weight you can put on the data to make the decision. You know, looking back at some of the projection manuals from just, say, 2-3 years ago, you know, for example, Oakwood School. Right now, we were projected to have well over 500 students attending that school. We only have 460. Now, is that close enough to have made a decision? I mean, that's a couple of classrooms of students. If you want to look at individual school projections, I don't believe that you can go more than a year or two out and make some really hard, fast decisions on those projections at each individual site. I don't believe that you can do that. You know, to have numbers on a piece of paper and have it go out 5-10 years may make you feel better, but you have to remember those are only projections based on the best information available, based on, excuse me, some set of assumptions that we could question and challenge as well. So, you know, the data that's been produced in the past has been proven inaccurate to some degree. That isn't the only piece of information that you can make a decision on. And I'd also add, I don't think it's typical in the referendum environment that this elaborate Plan B has already been spelled out. I don't think that's typical. I don't think that's abnormal. So I sort of, I guess, take somewhat of offense that, gee, that's something that's supposed to be done, you know, that we're being irresponsible for not having that laid out, because that isn't what's done. And again, I don't think it's fair to make people believe that we have absolutely no idea what we'll do April 8th if the referendum fails. We need to gather things together and work on Plan B.
Well, back to your Dow Jones and Ushel question.
Yeah, I want the answer.
I answered it already.
You maybe
But-
don't want the answer.
No, you're right.
But back to your answer, what I heard was enrollment projections are unreliable as you go out farther. Therefore, let's just essentially not look at them. And I don't agree with that. I think the more data you have to make a decision, the better. We can debate the validity of the data, but the data in the past, projections have been off of birth rates and off of existing first 1-year-old, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds that we know that currently live here that should enter the system. So having information is better than having old, outdated information. And I should remind everybody, up until a few years ago, the board looked at projections just about every year. So there has been a kind of a noticeable absence of data in projections in the last few years, kind of to coincide with this decision. And I think that more information, more data, more research to make the case for a very large expenditure is better than less. And I think most people can appreciate that.
Want to respond to that at all? Or?
Well, I guess I'd have to say that we are working on getting updated information for projections. But again, whatever information is available today, or that we gather today, certainly can influence decisions. But it's not the only component as far as enrollment. We could have Oshkosh Corp, some large employer, close shop, one of the hospitals, leave town. We could have somebody move into town. I mean, there's something that you just can't forecast and just plan. You have to respond to. So, I mean, there are some significant things that you can't forecast. I would say, though, I don't want someone to get a picture that, gee, we've failed to gather and continue to look at data. As a matter of fact, I think we've made more efforts in other areas to do so. We recently brought in Skyward software. With that, now we're able to look more finitely at our employees to see who is employed at which positions and the salaries and benefits tied to all of that. We can do a lot better forecasting. We're bringing in, I believe the information is loaded, and we're running the preliminary modeling right now with some forecasting software that puts all of that data into a model. We can put assumptions into that model, do projections, and do a lot of what ifs. What if we have attendance change in different schools? That'd be one thing. What if we increase class sizes? What if the interest rates increase, decrease? All of those changes can happen. We can see what the impact's going to be fairly easily and quickly. We never had that before. It was just brute force calculation, get somebody with a spreadsheet and try and figure it out. But we're putting the tools in place to be able to better forecast and understand the effects of changes we might propose.
Wayne, one of my frustrations with the current board, and I know that a lot of talk has been done on the blogs and so forth, and people seem to be voting against a referendum because of board members. I really get that sense.
I do too.
And it's not so much that they're voting against the referendum because of issues. I think they're voting against personalities, and that, I think, is very unfortunate.
Yep.
But my
would agree.
frustration with the current board is that you brought forth, I've kind of lost track of the letters of these different plans, but there were a lot of different plans that were brought forth for school closures and redistricting and so forth. And I mentioned this on the show that we did with Dennis Kavanaugh and Matt Wiedenhuft. And I'll say it here. I have to believe that the best possible plan or scenario was brought forward first. And then when parents who would have children affected by that plan sort of came forward at the school board meeting en masse and complained about that, you guys kind of stepped back, backpedaled, and all of a sudden another scenario was presented. And then parents from that area came forward, and the same thing happened. And it just seemed like one by one, the scenarios, I mean, my God, we couldn't keep up.
We were up to H, I think.
We couldn't
you were
keep
too.
up.
I mean, how many there were.
I don't think citizens could keep up. I don't even think some school board members had an easy time keeping up. And that's kind of my frustration. I guess at one point, the school board has to say, okay, these are the schools we're going to close, and that's going to be it. How would you respond to that?
Well, unfortunately, we went through some cycles that I'd say distracted us from the task at hand. The K3, 4, 8 grade configuration, that whole proposal, I think it merited some evaluation. I mean, I think it was a different way of looking at things, with the hopes of maybe finding efficiencies, maybe finding a way to address some of the issues we've had for a while and continue to struggle with. But in the end, I think there was some support going down that path that was almost, I would say, well, we've gone this far. We got to see it to the end, and I just didn't see that at the end. And part of it was influence from the community. Again, anything that we want to do above and beyond sort of status quo or as things are, we need support from the community. If they're not going to support it, we're going to really struggle to try and implement it.
Well, sure, but you'll never have 100% support, no matter
Oh,
what
absolutely
you
not.
put forth. And at some point, I think the board has to be leaders, as they were elected to be, and say, okay, this is what our consultants say is the best thing. We've looked at this. This is what our administration is saying is the best. And, we're very sorry that you feel you may be negatively impacted by this, but we were elected to make a decision, and we have to make one. And Ben, your thoughts, comments?
Well, I think that good data to substantiate your decision is so important, because, of course, parents are going to challenge the board like they should, based on the recommendations, proposals, or your decisions. And I think back to, for example, the evolution of the boundary changes. At one point, the board, the recommendation was to move Lakeside students to Oshkosh North, which those students are closer to North Fond du Lac than they are to Maryland North. So, and I think that if we have reasonable decisions or reasonable recommendations, I find parents are very reasonable. Green Meadow is now a 4-5 school. Lakeside is a K3 school. That was actually a big disruption to that community, and it turned out to be a really interesting decision, because now we find out that not only do we save some money, but also it turned out to be the highest performing third grade school, the Green Meadow Lakeside. And I actually did not hear a lot of complaints, because I thought the board actually had pretty good information to the parents, and as a result, parents are very reasonable in the community. Parents and the community. And I think back to when the administration recommended closing South Park, and they didn't have, and I actually went through South Park and I talked to some staff, and we found out in a short period of time that this isn't going to work. But the genie was already out of the bottle, and then we try to, you can't kind of unring that bell, and you lose a lot of credibility. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of happens, and we saw it with the with the superintendent search, offering the contract publicly to one person, and he decided to not take it. And I think if we're a little more moderate and cautious on our decisions, I think that the public will in kind respond favorably. But I wanted to make one point. You indicated that you seem like some people might just take it out because they don't really like the board, which is, I'm going to challenge you on this, because I haven't been on the board for a year. So you'd think if the board's less divisive, that they would be like, hey, I'm supporting this because that Schneider guy's off the board. So I'm gonna challenge you on that one, because I think that if the board's more cohesive, like you suggested, you'd see a lot of support for these proposals. And I too have not seen a lot of support out there in the community for this. So I'm just trying to challenge you.
Well, I'm not sure how much support there is or there isn't. I mean, we don't know, and we're not going to know until April 7th. I mean, I kind of feel I know how one of them is going to go, but I'm not sure about the other two. But you know, I do think that if you read the Northwestern site, there are some people over and over and over again complaining about the board. And so it obviously has to do with personalities much more so than issues. So, and I was actually, you just kind of agreed with me, but, you know, I was actually the one who said that. We're running out of time here, but is there any circumstance under which you would support going to referendum, Ben?
Oh, the answer is yes. Provided that, I mean, one is, in this terrible economic environment, I do not support going to referendum. And I know a lot of people are comparing the referendum to barter burgers and all that, but it just stresses out people. I think that, and this is in part why I did not support budgets when I was in the school board, is we have to do a better job of managing our existing $117 million record budget before we go ask for more. And we spend over $10,000 per pupil on our students, obviously as we're done it, but and I think that the community wants us to be good stewards of their money, and after we demonstrate that, after we look at all our programs and critically evaluate our staffing and making sure we're efficient and we're, you know, making some enrollment driven maybe potential school modifications, I would, but I kind of feel that this is kind of like more of the first step. But to answer your question, yes. But I think we need to have a very high hurdle to clear to make sure we've done all our due diligence, so we can have these discussions and be able to answer those questions that people have, like what are your enrollment projections? You know.
Now you want a different budget system. You keep saying, I've heard you say, and I think Esslinger for mayor wants it. You want zero-based budgeting, and I think I understand it. My question to Wayne would be: would it cost the school district money to switch to an entirely different budget system?
Well, it's not. Zero-based budgeting is a philosophy.
Okay.
There's a number of different forms that could take.
Okay.
And it's all kind of a spectrum on, well, do you truly start with an absolute clean slate?
And I think that's what you want to do, isn't it, Ben? You want to start at zero?
You could say that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
You know,
I'll finish when
okay.
he's done.
You know, put the pieces in place. Well, there are some pieces you have to have in place. We have to have buildings. We have to have some teachers. We have to have some administrators. I mean, there's I guess some level of overhead that you need to incur.
Will it end up different?
Anytime you approach something from a different direction, you probably end up with slightly different results.
Okay.
How much so, I don't know. Now, I'd like to say we are approaching things a little differently. Again, with some of the software that we've put in place, we've also brought in, named a community oversight audit committee, so to speak, to try and add transparency and some more insight from another perspective into the budgeting process. I just proposed, and we passed, going deeper into our needs for bidding. Instead of only $730-some thousand, let's go out for 1.4. Are we going to spend that? No, we haven't put the budget in place and committed those dollars, but that's the first step, at least getting a bid out. I think that with some of the new faces we have in administration, with some of the new tools we have in place, there's going to be some different results here.
Ben?
Yeah, and you referenced the Northwestern article about, you know, what's really important. You know, I indicated special ed, special ed, the maintenance and the custodial, and that's why I think we need to look at our budget from the ground zero, build it up, because we're at $117 million, and we need to start prioritizing. You know, I know Mr. Trask and I agree on maintenance and custodial being a top priority. The difference is, I would have voted no on cutting $300,000 from maintenance, and unfortunately he voted yes. And I think if that's your most important priority, you know, you put your vote where your priority is. And I think it's not good enough to say you're concerned about it and then doing it, because I know there wasn't a ton of flexibility, but really a good budget starts in the budget construction process, not once July 1st rolls around and we're in our new fiscal year. So I think we need to take little more time. I proposed it for many years when I was in facilities and finance, and we had committee support, and then it got to the board, and I think that it just kind of, well, we just couldn't get over the hump there. But I think that we're going to have to do that, and the public needs to know that we have a record budget, and we have a record budget, and we are not putting a record amount of money into maintenance in custodial, and I think we need to change that if we want to get ahead of the curve.
Wayne, you had sort of indicated about that $300,000 being cut from maintenance. Do you want to address that? You kind of indicated a little bit of frustration there, I guess, with what Ben was saying.
I've heard it many times said that we voted to cut that amount. That is factual in that a resolution was passed for us to balance projected shortfall in the budget while we're in the budget. Contracts are already executed, so as far as salaries and benefits of staff, there's not a whole lot of flexibility. That's over 85% of the budget. What's left? Facilities, site budgets. We cut site budgets, spending less on supplies and things like that. Again, as I said, as we go through the year, if we find opportunities, I want to rededicate those funds to what we had to set aside. And again, we're spending more money this year than we have last year. Is it enough? Absolutely not. It's not enough, but we need to work towards growing that, and I'm dedicated to doing that.
Okay. Well, we're almost out of time. Why don't each of you take about 30 seconds, look into camera 3, and tell folks why they should vote for you on Tuesday, April 7th. I don't care who goes first, whichever.
Go ahead.
Ben, go ahead.
Thanks. Well, I want to thank you for the challenging debate, and I think that's fine that you can challenge us on positions. I served 6 years in the board. I was consistent. I expressed my concern with a vote. I bring a unique perspective to the school board. As a self-employed financial advisor, I really understand budgets. As a parent of children in our school, I'm certainly impacted by the decision that we make, and I hope to earn your support on April 7th.
Wayne Traska, again, I appreciate both of you, all three of you actually, for being here this evening. I think it's important to get as much information out to the community as possible, and this is one avenue to do that. On April 7th, I hope you make the decision to re-elect me to the school board. 3 years, I've learned an awful lot. Anyone who hasn't gone into this for the first time, I think there's an education up front that you need to dedicate to getting in, but then you need to also rededicate yourself, and that's what I'm doing this time. I want to continue the work that we've started. I think, again, with changes in administration, there's some exciting times ahead, but there's some huge challenges ahead of us as well.
Okay, great. Thanks to both
Thank
of you
you
for
both.
being here. We appreciate it. Good luck to you.
Thank
And
you.
that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.